Well, what do you know? It's Mac and Mac. After a St. Patrick's Day, fitting that we get McMullen and McDonald up here, right? Johnny Mac overslept. I think he got housed yesterday. I think he was drinking St. Patrick's Day into oblivion, and no such luck. Both of us working on Sundays on a bad day. That's just the worst day to have St. Patrick's Day. Shouldn't be Sunday. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, fine. Take the day off. Have a good time. Saturday is great. Sleep it off on Sunday. Worst day to have St. Patrick's Day is Sunday. But we will effort through a Birds 365 episode number 725 coming your way today with J-Mac and J-Mac. Got to give props here to one of our streamers. I love when we start the show, or at least I do, with a laugh. Dave Brosius. I don't recognize Dave. I don't think he's one of the usual streamers who said, John and Jody, Eagles lock up Aaron Donald yet? Not surprising. Some people have
first call for Aaron Donald. Yeah, why not?
Why not? The magician that is Howie Roseman will somehow talk Aaron Donald out of retirement and give the Rams a 6th-round draft pick somehow to get the best defensive tackle in football, maybe ever, and certainly over the last couple of decades. No, we think Aaron is actually retired.
I love in free agency, Jody, when people sign. Best example of this will be Devin White, signed Pro Bowl linebacker. You see a headline, signed Pro Bowl linebacker back when it, 2019, whatever it was, when he was in the Pro Bowl.
All pro, even better than he was second team all pro.
Well, with Aaron Donald, you could say it every single year be correct. Every single year of his career.
Yeah, we don't need to list the Pro Bowls. The greatest defensive lineman in the history of the National Football League. That's a pretty good title to be carrying around, and you can certainly argue that Aaron Donald deserves it, but he will not be a Philadelphia Eagle. Sorry.
He's from Pennsylvania. He's from No, I don't even want to go down that route. I apologize.
No, I appreciate the fact that he threw it in there. I'm hoping he was doing it as tongue-in-cheek as humanly possible. Maybe really meant it. If that's the case, don't get your hopes up there, big guy. But man, do we have a lot to talk about, because it was a busy weekend starting shortly thereafter, after we got off the air on Friday. And it's a move that will have less of an impact on the Eagles than Saquon Barkley or Bryce Huff or CJ GJ and the guys that the Eagles signed. But quarterback, of course, grabs all the attention in the National Football League because of the importance of the position. And the Eagles added a quarterback on Friday, Johnny Mac. Kenny Pickett coming home. And then you saw all the pictures of Pickett in his Eagle jersey as a kid, growing up in New Jersey, Eagles fan. It makes for good copy. It's interesting. He's still Kenny Pickett, who's had 2 underwhelming seasons in the National Football League, and he's going to come here to be the backup to Jalen Hurts. When you and I were discussing last week as to what the Eagles are going to do with the backup quarterback position, we both said they could use a veteran. They might not be ready to turn it over to Tanner McKee. If they were, it would have been great. You wouldn't even have to spend the money to get a backup quarterback or the resources to get a backup quarterback. Apparently, and both you and I kind of doubted they were ready to do that they get a veteran guy. Can we call Kenny Pickett a veteran? He's had 24 starts in the National Football League, which in some ways makes him a veteran.
Number. Yeah, I think you can. I think this to me is I take each move in free agency. People get mad at me when I don't like it. People like it when I do like. This is a typical Eagles move. This I like. Now, again, is a backup quarterback. I like it as a backup quarterback. And what you're looking for at a backup quarterback is to not sink your season if they have to go into the game or into multiple games. And I think he's that guy. He might be more of a game manager type. I know nobody likes that description, but who cares? You talk about those 24 starts and everybody said, well, he can't do this, he can't do that. He won a bunch of football games. The supporting cast is not terrible in Pittsburgh, obviously, but it's not great either. And he won a bunch of football games, and he found ways to get him across the finish line. I think that's a valuable trait. And then you talk about the money. It's cost effective for 2 years. Just under 2 million this year, not 10, 2 million, and next year 2.6 million for a backup quarterback. Have you been paying attention to the backup quarterback market out there, people? big time money. Marcus Mariota got 6. He got a raise.
A raise.
He got a raise. The Eagles got a guy who's won 14 of those 24 starts as the quarterback for under $2 million for a year and then 2.6. That's really, really good. And then obviously you're not picking up the 50-year option as a first-round pick. Yeah, I love the move, and they liked him coming out of college. All that, your people at the time, Howie Roseman liked him, but he was sort of in no man's land. That was my angle. I don't care. He was an Eagles fan. That doesn't matter to me. When it matters to me that this is a good way to go get a backup quarterback. How he liked him coming out of the draft, even went out to watch him. Now it helped, it's midweek, the weird conference, and
right with the Thursday night game. Yeah.
And it's so close. So that helped, but he usually doesn't do that. So it was somewhat meaningful. And, they knew they weren't going to take him in the first round. They thought he was a bottom of the first round pick. They knew they were at going to get Jordan Davis at 13. They started at 15, I believe, and bolted up. So they knew they weren't going to take him there, and they knew he probably wasn't going to get the 53. But this is why you do your homework, because who knows, 2 years down the road, player might become available, and you like the player, and you say, all right, let's do this. That's why you do the due diligence on players that might be in no man's land from where you are, from a draft perspective. Yeah, I don't see any negative to this move.
I'll give you negatives.
All right.
You need negatives. I can give you negatives. First things first, I don't hate the move because all the things you stated are, well, no, not all of them, but a bunch of them are accurate.
Oh, come on, all of them.
John, I know you can read a box score, even if you didn't watch the Pittsburgh Steelers games because you're kind of busy watching Eagle games. The Pittsburgh Steelers won games that he started because of their defense or because of their running game, not because of Kenny Pickett. Kenny Pickett didn't get them to the finish line. Other players on the team got them to the finish line for him to have an above 500 record. That Kenny Pickett did not add anything, next to nothing, to the Steelers offense when he was their starting quarterback. I would go almost far enough to say the Steelers won despite Kenny Pickett, with the fact that he had a winning record. Those are just the stats and the facts from watching the tapes of the game. Number two, the fact that Howie went to see him in college, just because he liked them 2 years ago, doesn't mean he's developed and gotten better and or even lived up to expectations that they once had. It's nice that Howie liked them back then, but we've had 2 years to look at him, and he's blown nobody away to this point. So it's coincidental that Howie liked them a couple of years ago. And the biggest point of which is Justin Fields was available for less of a price than was.
I'm with you. What you just said about Kenny Pickett, times it by 50 with Justin Fields. I'm with you coming out of the draft. You know that. I like Justin Fields coming out of the draft. It's interesting. Here in Philadelphia, we went through a season where you don't want to blame Jalen Hurts, so everybody blames, not everybody, but a lot of people blame Brian Johnson. You go out in Denver, Nathaniel Hackett. You go out in Chicago, Luke Getsy. You go out in Pittsburgh, Matt Canada. Why isn't it Matt Canada's fault? It might be Matt Canada's fault. The NFL spoke on Justin Fields. The NFL spoke on Justin Fields and where they think he is as a prospect. I don't think the Eagles like him as a player. They checked in on him because they check in on him. I don't think anybody likes him as a player. And maybe it was, I said, maybe Chicago. Obviously, you love the athleticism. He's the quarterback version of Devin White. That's what he is. He's a quarterback, but he's a tremendous athlete. He's not very good at football right now. When I got to see him live, the first thing I said, and people can go to YouTube and watch the shows after when the Eagles were out in Chicago. I'm like, this guy's processing with a sundial. Ball doesn't come out. I don't think the Eagles, if you say, now by no means am I trying to say Kenny Pickett's going to be a star quarterback in this league. But again, to get, and you say, yeah, they won with defense and a running game. But as a quarterback in this league, you can lose games You can lose games by turning the football over, by making stupid mistakes, by not doing the right thing. Might even be throwing the football away to punt the football. He doesn't make a ton of mistakes, and that's what I want out of my backup quarterback. For all the talk about the small hands, I think he's fumbled one time in 2 years. One time in 2 years for all the talk about the small hands. Again, for the value, and that's another part. You get 2 years.
Well, hold on. All right, the 2-year value. Someone has been telling me for 3 years now, we've been doing this show, that the Eagles treat day 2 picks like gold. You can't move a day 2 pick. When I was suggesting they trade a 3 for Patrick Queen, Howie Roseman will never trade a day 2 pick. There's no way he's going to give up day 2 pick. Round 5, round 6, 5. All right, fine, but he's not going to give up. They gave up a day 2 pick for Kenny Pickett.
They gave up 22 spots in the draft.
That's not what you said, John. I tried to ask you about that. The difference between a day 3 and a day 2 and a day 3 pick. And you just continue to tell me that. But day 2, they won't give up day 2. You can't give up day 2. There's a difference between day 2 and day 3. That day in between is huge. They gave it up.
In general,
Kenny Pickett.
And you always say the opposite thing. So you're trying to beat me in an argument. If you want to beat me in an argument, 3rd round pick, 97th pick. They dropped 20, I think it was 22 spots in the draft. They dropped 22 spots in the draft and gave him a future 7th round pick. That's what they gave up for Kenny Pickett. Now, yes, is it when all the context of the draft goes away and whomever Pittsburgh takes with the 97th pick, I think it is, he'll always be a 3rd round pick. And if the Eagles keep that 4th round pick, that person will always be a 4th round pick. But that's the reality of it. They dropped 22 spots in the draft and gave him a 7th round pick for a guy who started 24 games. And you dismiss the contract part of it. I mean, Justin Fields is done after this year, and then he's got an option for $25.6 million. And we all know, no, Pittsburgh's not picking that up. Chicago, if they kept him, is not picking up. Nope. Philadelphia, if they acquired him, is not picking him up. 32 teams aren't picking that up. We know that. So they get an extra year, and they're cheaper in both years than they would be with Justin Fields. Look, all I'm saying is this is for a backup quarterback. I don't want to see either one of them play. I don't want to see either of them play, but Kenny Pickett makes more sense than Justin Fields, unless you want to say, well, they could have got Justin Fields for a conditional 6th round pick, which they probably could have. And that's that much better. And by the way, that's meaningless. I'm not trying to say that's meaningful. That tells you where Justin Fields is in this league's eyes. It's a meaningless pick. So from that standpoint, all right, if you like the player, but I don't think they like the player like everybody else.
Okay. And I'm just telling you, I like Justin Fields significantly better than Kenny Pickett. I don't think it's close between the two. And in all these things that we're putting on the table are part of the equation. They all are. The fact that you had to give up a 3rd round pick, the fact that you get an extra year or cheap of Kenny Pickett as compared to Justin Fields. Justin Fields slightly more. When you give a guy like Bryce up $51 million, if you're going to fight over the $800,000 more that Justin Fields is going to count on the cap this year than Kenny Pickett, okay, I don't think that's that big a deal. Howie is a cap magician. He'll certainly be able to adjust having to pay $800,000 more, less than $1 million more for Fields this year. Here's the bottom line for me. Here's what wins the day over anything else. Jalen Hurts breaks his leg week 3 next year. I'd hope doesn't happen. Hopefully, Jalen plays all 17 games and he doesn't even get hurt the way and played hurt the way that he did this year. But that's why you get a backup quarterback. Part of your line of reasoning is the safety net of, oh, spit, your starting quarterback gets hurt and he's done for the year. If that happens with the Philadelphia Eagles with Kenny Pickett as their quarterback, I'd say their season is over. Their chance to make the playoffs is out the window. They will not be making the playoffs with Kenny Pickett quarterbacking 14 games for them next year. If Justin Fields is here, I think you still have a chance to make the playoffs. I think his
Yeah,
game is more
I don't agree with
applicable
that.
to Jalen Hurts. All
I
right,
mean,
yeah, fine. You don't like you've given up on Justin Fields. I haven't.
he's played 2 seasons, and he's played 12 games in both seasons, and he's won 7 games, Kenny Pickett. And by the way, the Eagles,
Haven't you told me wins isn't a quarterback
it
stat?
isn't a quarterback stat until
You're
you
holding
get,
Justin Fields accountable for all those
well,
in Chicago.
until you get to an extreme. I hold Saquon Barkley accountable as a running back. He's not even a quarterback. When you get to that extreme, when you just can't win football games, period, end of sentence, that's a problem. Yes, by and large, look, you could have the greatest quarterback in the world. If you don't have anything around him, you're going to have trouble, being more than a 500 team. The best are going to elevate certain people, but you're still going to struggle. The Eagles are supposed to be built, not supposed to be, they got stars all over the place. Stars, 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 stars. They got a better, in theory, supporting cast than the Pittsburgh Steelers. So if he can win games for them, why the hell can't he win games here? I haven't seen Justin Fields win games. Maybe he goes to Pittsburgh. And by the way, I saw somebody say he didn't want to come to Philadelphia. I don't know if that's the case, but I will give you the one red flag to me with Kenny Pickett. He didn't want to compete.
No, he wanted to be
off.
handed the job in Pittsburgh.
Much easier to get on the field in Pittsburgh than it is in Philadelphia. So I'll acknowledge that's the one red flag to me because, hey, Russell Wilson, Hall of Fame quarterback, but he's a clearly descending player. And they got him for 1 year, so there's no long-term commitment to him. And from Justin Fields' perspective, if he can play, you'll see it because he'll be in a better situation. Pittsburgh's a better situation than Chicago, although Chicago's had some significant wide receiver talent to already having DJ Moore. But in theory, Pittsburgh's almost always going to be a better situation than Chicago. So he'll have a better opportunity to prove himself anyway, Justin Fields, to rescue that to rescue his career. And he needs a change of scenery. And to be honest, that's a good spot for him as well. But for the Eagles, I want a game manager. I want somebody who's going to just get them to the finish line. And again, most people take that as a negative. Feel free to take it as a negative. Feel free. But, Justin Fields made a lot of plays in Chicago, believe it or not. But what he wins, he doesn't win at all. And he doesn't win because he's making the big mistake. And it's because so many of these games are close. And so many of these games are within a score in the fourth quarter. And all of a sudden, you do something goofy and boom, the game's going the other way. Well, I don't want that as a backup quarterback. I want a solid, I'm not expecting a superstar. And if Jalen Hurts gets hurt in week 3, it ain't good. It ain't good with no matter what backup quarterback you're going to get. But what you want is a game manager that can hopefully get you to the finish line if you have a good supporting cast.
Yeah, I'm going to put more emphasis on the organization from which they came. Pittsburgh's a winning organization. They always win. Mike Tomlin's never had a losing record. Mike Tomlin gets the Steelers to the finish line, not Kenny Pickett. And your opinion on the Chicago Bears the last several years as an organization?
Yeah, you know it. It's awful. And you
dumpster fire. Hey, dumpster fire is the way you've described it. And if anything, I defend. I can't disagree with your overall sentiment, but you've been much more demeaning of the Chicago organization than I have. But after what Ryan Poles has done this offseason, I can't sign on with you any more than I already have.
And people forget very quickly in this league. The Chicago Bears traded down last year to do another 12 months with Justin Fields. In theory, they could have had CJ Stroud and been 12 months ahead of the curve. They wasted an entire season. They ruined this particular quarterback who I like coming out. And that's part of the problem because the Chicago Bears have destroyed Justin Fields. to the point he's worth nothing. So, yeah, when you say Ryan Poles in the moment looks good because he keeps Sam Hinkie and losing, and I got big-time draft picks, and I got money, and I got this, he could have had C.J. Stroud a year ago.
Right.
A year ago, and not wasted 12 months of another bullshit degree of football for the city of Chicago, who, by the way, doesn't deserve it. Great football city. I mean, and they destroyed Justin Fields, destroyed him to the point they got a conditional 6th-round pick for that quarterback. Think about that.
That's pretty sad. They are the dumpster fire you described them as. And maybe the biggest signal to that to me was Kevin Byard, 2 years and $14 million they signed to an offseason contract. We watched Kevin Byard do nothing after he was acquired. But we had one pick in the Kansas City game because Mahomes by mistake threw it directly to him. Wasn't like he made a great athletic. He got the ball thrown right to him. I don't know if the wide receiver ran a wrong route or the ball slipped out of Mahomes' hand, but it was easy. Johnny McElroy could have picked off that pass to the back of the end zone. That was all Kevin Byard did his entire time here with the Eagles, and somehow that merited a 2-year, $14 million contract. Yeah, Ryan Poles is a joke as their general manager, and that's why I'm going to say Justin Fields didn't grow, didn't become a better quarterback, didn't put up the numbers and or the wins that he was supposed to. I still love the kid. I still love the talent, and I hope he gets a chance at some point to play. Not going to happen in Pittsburgh this year unless Russell Wilson breaks his leg, but I would be willing to wager that he is going to have a bigger, better career. I think today's a better quarterback than Kenny Pickett. I think tomorrow, next week, the year after, the next 10 years, he'd be a better quarterback. And for less of a cost of an acquisition, more of a cost on salary, slightly this year, and you get one extra year with Pickett. Give me the kid who can play, and I think Fields can play, and I think Pickett can't. All right, we get Jeff Kerr's opinion on this. He is scheduled to join us coming up next a little bit later in the show. We're going to do, last week we had our boy Leonard on from New York, who talked about not only Saquon, but the Giants and the offseason moves they had made. So we got to look at the Giants with their work during the offseason, the free agency week. We'll do the other two teams in the division this week. We're going to get John Machota from the Athletic, who covers the Cowboys, up today. A little later in the week, we'll get our boy Grant Paulson from Washington to talk about the Commanders, who I think have actually had a really good first week of free agency. They had a lot of room to improve because they were that bad last year, but I think they've actually done a pretty damn good job of it. So we're going to give you a couple of guys from out of town talking about the Eagles' top rivals, chief rivals. But first up, Jeff Kerr, CBSSports.com, scheduled to join us next here on Birds 365.